Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday morning to you. Welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. Got a long way to go. I tell you, the subject that we are currently investigating, the wedding motif, the wedding at the coming of the Lord, is to me one of the richest, incredible studies that I have ever personally been involved in. I know that there's much of it that I probably am still ignorant about, and yet I can see a thread that runs throughout the prophetic books all the way through the New Testament and is developed in such a way. And I will say this with a caveat. I will say it's difficult to miss, although I missed it for many, many years. It simply had to do with my ignorance of Jewish customs, Jewish terminology, Jewish culture, and the incredible significance of the relationship between marriage and covenant. For years and years and years, I failed to see, and I didn't refuse, I just simply failed to see that when God dealt with covenant, he was dealing with marriage. Those two concepts, those two words are absolutely so interwoven with one another as to be totally inseparable. Pardon me. You know, we have a tendency to compartmentalize subjects and to say, well, today I'm going to talk about the kingdom. Oh, well, tomorrow I'm going to talk about the resurrection. Oh, and then day after that, I'm going to talk about the judgment. Or the day after that, I'm going to talk about the church. When we do that, we fail to see that in the Hebraic mindset, there is an interweaving and an interrelationship between all of these subjects that cannot be broken. N.T. Wright points out that in the discussions of the kingdom, for instance, that the word kingdom and the word temple do not occur all that many times in connection with one another. Very, very few times. And yet, as N.T. Wright points out, the failure or to fail to see that when you're talking about the temple of God at Jerusalem, you are talking about almost the foundation of the kingdom. And thus, to speak about the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple is the destruction of the kingdom. He has some really great comments on that. Now, I say that because in Matthew chapter 25, in our ongoing investigation and study of the Olivet Discourse, Jesus told the parable of the 5 wise, the 5 foolish virgins, and the coming of the bridegroom for the wedding. I have shared with you the idea of how critically important it is to see as the background, to see as the foundation, to see as the fountain for Matthew chapter 25. In order to understand Matthew 25, we have to understand the concept of the wedding. And ever so briefly, by way of recapitulation, God was married to all 12 tribes. There was the divided kingdom. Israel, the 10 northern tribes, went off into apostasy, and here's something that is absolutely critical. Over and over and over again, her infidelity to Yahweh was described as adultery. And it was described as harlotry. Now, you want to keep this in mind for our later studies, okay? In the Old Testament, as Sebastian Smolar's in a fantastic article on the metaphor of harlotry in the Old Testament. He points out that of all of the numbers of times that the word harlot is used in the Old Testament, in the huge majority of cases, it is used in the context of a wife that broke the wedding covenant. And thus, in the book of Hosea, the 10 northern tribes played the harlot. Now, they were married to Yahweh, as God expressed it in Isaiah chapter 54, verse 4 to 6. Your maker is your husband. He was married to the whole house of Israel. But the 10 northern tribes committed spiritual adultery. Now listen, you want to see some really graphic language, go to Ezekiel 16 and Ezekiel 23. Well, if you want to read all of the interim chapters, that's fine. But Ezekiel 16 and Ezekiel 23 uses incredibly graphic language to describe how the 10 northern tribes, and then followed by the 2 southern tribes, committed harlotry, committed spiritual adultery. Now remember, for her adulterous ways, God brought a harvest on the 10 northern tribes of the destruction of the kingdom. Hosea 1, verse 3. Amos 9, verses 9 and following. And in Hosea chapter 6, God said, that Judah would also have her own harvest. What was Israel's harvest? National destruction, the destruction of the kingdom. Not the house of Judah, but the kingdom. He could not destroy Judah because Messiah, who was to come through Judah, had not yet come. Although he said in Jeremiah chapter 23, remember, speaking of Coniah, that none of his seed would ever sit on the throne in Jerusalem and Judea again. Folks, that's critical. God was going to destroy the, quote, national kingdom in that geopolitical, militaristic way, but he would preserve the house. And the lawgiver would not depart from Judah, nor the scepter, the rule, from between his feet, until Shiloh comes, to whom the gathering of the people shall be. Now, watch this. Hosea 6, 7 and following. Judah would have her harvest at the time of the gathering of the remnant. But Judah would continue until that time, and it would be at that time that Judah's national existence would truly pass away. I don't care how you want to put it, folks. National Judah ceased to exist in AD 70. What has been called the restoration of Israel in 1948 is absolutely not the restoration of Judah or Benjamin. But I've got to hurry here. Now, pardon me. So God said Judah would have her harvest at the time of the gathering, the time of the harvest. Well, in Matthew 13, as I pointed out in my last video, Jesus foretold the harvest at the end of the age. That's the time of the gathering. That's the gathering of Genesis 49, which would be the consummation of Judah's history. Now, very quickly, because, boy, I'm running out of time this morning, I want you to notice a very, very important text, and it's Matthew chapter 12, 38 and following. Some of the scribes and the Pharisees came to Jesus and said, "Teacher, we want to see a sign from you." Now, notice what he said. Now, remember, the 10 northern tribes are not in the land. They are not restored. They are not restored to the 2 southern tribes. Pardon me. Jesus is dealing with Judah and Benjamin, of course. Jesus said, "An evil and an adulterous generation seeks after a sign, but no sign shall be given it except the sign of Jonah." Now, look at what he does. His reference to this wicked and adulterous generation harkens to 2 realities. Number 1, it harkens back to Deuteronomy 32, verse 5. Deuteronomy is a prediction of Israel, more specifically, Judah's last days. Deuteronomy 32, 19 through 21, Deuteronomy 32, 29 through 32. Oh, that they were wise. Oh, that they would consider what their last end shall be. But Deuteronomy 32 and verse 5, looking forward to that end, calls it a wicked and perverse generation. In other words, the last generation of Israel's existence would be the wicked, the adulterous generation. So number 1, Jesus' reference here harkens us back to Deuteronomy 32, a prediction, listen carefully, of Israel's last days, when Israel, Judah and Benjamin specifically, would be the wicked and perverse generation. But that's not all. A wicked and adulterous generation. What did God call the 10 northern tribes? A harlot, an adulteress. And here is Jesus calling his own generation wicked and adulterous, citing Deuteronomy, which told them they were the last generation of Israel's national existence, Judah's national existence. And he was also telling them they were playing the harlot, which meant their harvest, which was to be the same kind of harvest as Israel, their harvest was coming in that generation. Now, that's all the time I've got for this morning. I'll pick this up tomorrow morning. In the meantime, do not forget our September special. Since we're talking about the wedding, we shall meet him in the air, the wedding of the King of Kings. Hosea, 30 lessons in MP3 form. Hosea as the foundation of Paul's resurrection doctrine, dealing also with the wedding motif, and free of charge, included in the package, Have Heaven and Earth Passed Away. Normally, these would cost you, if you purchased them separately and paid separate shipping, it would cost you $56. September special, U.S. orders only, total delivered price, $35. There's a banner on my website, donkpreston.com, BibleProphecy.com. Go there and order the special. If there's not a banner there, just contact me, okay? Or go to PayPal and send us $35, or pay for the, or go to the website, order the books. It'll charge you full price, but make a note, September special, and I'll refund your shipping. I've already done that for several people. Okay, sorry for the voice this morning. Allergies are raging here locally in spite of everything that I've done. Hadn't done any good. Okay, thanks so much for joining me for this morning's Morning Musings. I will see you on the flip side.